Hi. I can start?
Yeah.
Okay, hi. My name is Roman, and today I will talk to you a little bit more about our test automation frameworks and the family of these tools and how they can increase your test automation from the scratch, or if you already have Selenium-based projects or in-house frameworks, and how your life can be easier. Just a few words about myself. I'm Roman Iovlev, works in EPAM company as Chief QA Automation or QA Architect, and in testing is almost 40 years. So let's go further. And what is about JDI Light? In few words, this is the test automation framework that based on the UI elements, which is more native for user than the common web elements or Selenium elements in standard frameworks. They are buttons, forms, tables, and so on. This is the part related to increasing your performance and stability of the tests, and it has pretty good logs and reports as the results. In general, the JDI Light is a product that developed originally from 15 years, and it's the result of the practice on a list of projects that we have in EPAM, and we want to share it with other projects. And now it's known enough in CIS countries, and we want to make it popular on the English-speaking audience too. So maybe for Russian speaking audience, it's a little bit known. But in any case, I will say about our new features and our new roadmap for the future. But first thing that I want to mention, that JDI in general, it's not only the UI automation framework. This is the family of testing frameworks for mobile testing, for services, and even page object generator plugin that I will demonstrate you during this presentation. Let's start with main feature of the JDI, the page objects. Common page objects, you know, in Selenium or Selenite or Serenity, is the kind of logical representation of the page. But in JDI, we have also the logical parts for these pages, like sections, blocks, for example, header, main section, and other stuff. We have complex elements like I don't know, radio buttons, drop downs, and so on. And the complex elements different to the simple elements, which are mostly represented by one locator, and complex elements consist of list of locators. So this is more complex things. Typical page objects in JDI, we call them UI objects because it's a little bit different. It's like extension of the Selenium page objects. Consists the site entity with pages and meta information for these pages like URL, title, and how we can validate them. This is the page objects itself for pages, where you can also mention this meta info. And if you know, in Selenite or Selenium, you need to initialize each page object with additional command in your page objects or in some code out of the page objects. Here you can just initialize the site entity, and it will initialize all pages, all elements in it in cascade way. So if, for example, some section has a locator, all elements under this section will have this locator, so will be searched in this context. I will demonstrate it a little bit further. And about the page, you can use the standard page objects without extending it from the web page. But if you add this extend web page, you will get for free a list of actions that are suitable for pages, like open it, go back, forward, operating with cache, get the HTML of this or page, or you can zoom it in and out. And all other stuff that related to the page you can get for free just writing extend from the page for the page objects. A few more examples of the elements, for example, login form, some kind of menus, drop downs, whatever you can meet in your applications. And the important thing that you can easily create the custom elements if you have some not standard things, not standard controls. This is the part of your development. We provide these capabilities, and this is a normal practice to create your elements on the project and use them in this page object structure. This is easier to do. And about elements that we already have, we try to implement by default the standards that are in the industry. First of all, we have elements for standard HTML kind of layouts, so like buttons, inputs, text fields, drop-downs, how they implement it without special stuff of the developers add for them. And we also plan to create packs for different popular frameworks, for example, Bootstrap for Angular collections, React collections, and other popular frameworks. But the main idea, if you have unstandard control, you can easily a little bit customize it and use on your project. This is a common practice. One more interesting thing, in JDI, you can easily work with list of elements and even list of page objects, like collections. The good example is search results for Google, for example. You have, when you search something, you will get the pretty similar parts of elements. You have, for example, 10 results with small page objects in it. Each of them have title, URL, and the description. And with JDI, you can easily manipulate them, just create one page object for one element and describe what elements you have on it. And just create on the page list of these page objects, list of sections, for example. And then you can write pretty much simple code like, I don't know, get first element from the list and get label for it or get link for it. This is a few examples what you can do with this list of page objects. You can get it by number, by name. You can even make them assertions for them. Just, for example, if we search, for example, JDI in Google, we expect that all results have this word or something other word. So we can just assert that any of the element lists contains this word, or each of them, or only one, non-one, and other stuff. And of course, the assets are the part not only for the complex elements, but for the simple ones too. So all buttons, all text fields, drop-downs, and so on also have their asserts that integrated in them and related to these elements. So they are pretty much tied to functions that we can do. And one interesting thing that all our weights not need to wait. So, for example, if you have some table that adds new lines during some time, for example, one line during the second, in the second, and you expect that sometime you need to have table of 10 lines, you just write assert that amount of lines is 10, and then it gets free. It will wait till it gets to 10. Original assets will fail when can get the element from the page, and it's not much to the assert, and we will wait during the timeout. If during timeout it's not happen, yes, it will fail. And this is really good thing for kind of flaky tests, for stale element exceptions, and all this stuff are processed by framework, and in most cases you don't need to write any code to cover these things, and you even don't need to think how to do it, to write some JavaScript, wait load, some events, Ajax, and all this stuff. Sometimes you want to automate something really fast, and you don't want to create page objects. For these cases, we have also a simple ability to create tests in simple way without page objects in Selenium or jQuery style. But I'm strongly not recommend to do it for long-term test automation. This is just for some fast validation or maybe in debug validation. You can use these simple forms for check some elements or work with pages. JDI will help you to reduce code, and sometimes it's about 2-3 times, but for some parts of the code it's really dozens of times. I just show you one typical example for the forms. For example, we have some contact form, and a lot of applications have different forms to fill. This form contains about 10, 11 elements, which are pretty much different. This is drop-downs, text fields, checkboxes, multi-selection, I will show it, and buttons. And we want to fill this form and validate it, maybe. So how the code for Selenium will look like? Don't read it. It's just to understand the amount of the code. You need to specify the locators for all these 10 elements. You need to specify these elements. And you can create the actions to submit this form and to validate this form. In average, it's about 40, 50 lines of code for just simple filling form. In Selenium or Serenity, you can write it a little bit smaller if you put the elements inside your actions. But this has ruined the page object pattern because elements are better to have out of the methods. But this is also will take you about 20 or 30 lines of code. So what we can do here, how JDI can help you to improve these page objects. First of all, in page objects, typically we have elements and we have actions on these elements. In JDI, you can remove all actions for forms. They are already in the framework. Then you write the extend form. Just add this, and you can just describe the elements, and you get additional capabilities to validate, to submit this form, to log in as something, and so on. Next part, we can simplify locators. If the locators have common part related to this section, as I already say, we can move it out and have the form, contact form on the element, and have the section where all locators are related or in context of this locator. So you get the smaller locators, and these locators are more stable because than the original, because they are in this context. And if you have the same locator, you can maybe some other elements on the page have text name locator. It will be not found. You will find only this one because it's in this context, in this section. This makes the test more stable. One more thing, you can reduce the locators itself. We have special locators that mixed CSS capabilities and XPath. I think you know, CSS locators are more simple and smaller to write, but XPath has more capabilities. For example, move up and down on the tree and find by text. We create additional capabilities to CSS locators, and JDI framework can minimize this stuff and let you write CSS kind of locators with XPath capabilities. You can also write with non-attribute style if you would like this, but I more prefer to have attributes-like style. And then you operate with this form. Originally, you write in Selenium, you write something, submit contact form, and put the parameters you want to operate with. And in JDI, you can work with entities. So if you have entity, for example, contact or entity user, you just can say the contact form, fill it with some contact 1, contact 2, big contact, or something like this. You can manipulate with entities, business entities. So as a result, for the original form implementation, we have about 40, 50 lines of code, and with JDI, we can reduce it to 10 just for describing the elements that have on this form. But this is not the end. We also can minimize it in just 1 line or 2 lines. The JDI have special capabilities to use smart locators, and if you work collaboratively with your developers, you can write even like this. How we can do it? I just try to explain it on example. For example, we have these kind of locators for these elements, and you can mention that names of the elements are pretty much the same that IDs they have. For example, name and name ID, how we try to find them. In this case, you can, if you have these agreements with, I don't know, developers, or you just mentioned that in application mostly you can operate on some of the attributes. This can be not only ID, for example, some special attribute that you add for your elements. You can ignore it. You can write in special part of the JDI that you use this attribute to generate known locators. And when it see the elements without locator, it will generate the locator based on the name and will find it by this locator. In this case, you can write in this simple way. And of course, you can use not only web elements, but the typified elements like text fields, buttons, and all this stuff. Just a few more examples on the cool features we have in JDI. You know, maybe to do some tricky stuff with elements, you need to create, for example, objects like actions and do stuff, for example, drag and drop, click and hold, and other stuff. In JDI, you have these options already in the elements, so you can write my element, do some action, and write only the code that you need to do. The same thing is for JS execution code. You can just write JS execute and write the code that you want to execute. A little bit simpler. And this is a lot of this kind of features you have in JDI. I can't mention all of them. Some of them are in appendix, and unfortunately I haven't time today to explain them, but you can find them here and also in our documentation future. So just small conclusions on reducing code. JDI helps to reduce code on thread slips and other weights kinds. It helps to reduce code because we have typified elements, and mostly the complex elements are tables, forms, and other things. You don't need to have logger strings to log your actions, because all actions in JDI are logged, and I will show you how it can be. You can use simplified locators, and one more feature I don't mention before, we have a driver manager that automatically gets the latest version of the driver and or the specific version if you mention it, and you don't need to go to site, download the driver, put it in some folder, and so on. You can also always use the driver in specific folder, but by default, you can use after download manager. And I will show you an interesting example about our other tools that integrated with JDI, but also can create the page objects for Selenium. It's JDN. It's Chrome plugin that helps to generate page objects in seconds. This is the kind of demo, live demo I see here. I have here. So, for example, we have this page, and we need to log in on it, select contact form, and fill this form with some data. This is a lot of elements, and they are really different, and you need to spend some time to fill it this amount of data. This looks like the simple test, but it takes a time. And I want to ask you maybe, how do you think, how many time it will take from you to write down this test scenario, create the test data, create the page object for it? Let's imagine it's a simple page object. It's good locators here, but you need time to find them and create the page objects. And of course, you need to write down this test scenario. How many of you will need more than one working day for this? Okay. Huh? For all this, login, all this scenario, login, select something in menu, fill the form, and validate that form filled by the correct data. So it's about 10 different elements on it, 3 elements on the login form, menu, and you need to create maybe test data for it and all this stuff. Okay, so how many of you need about more than half a day, but less than a day? I think this is the common answer. Mostly, if you're not really experienced in test automation, this will take about half a day plus from you to automate this test. How many of you need less than half a day? Yeah, also good. Most of the senior engineers need about from 1 to 4 hours, I think. How many can do it in 2 hours? Yeah, nice. Pretty much the same to answer from 2 to 4. How many of you need less than 1 hour? Like, we're really good and experienced engineers here. If you have recruitments here, you can write down maybe this. guys. And did you think that you can do it in 10, 20 minutes? This is the superior guy here. He can do it. This is maybe your homework. Let's try to automate this thing. I will share the URL to this public site we developed for testing. Let's try, just for you. Okay, 15 minutes. Okay, nice. So I will show you the simple demo. Unfortunately, I write down it as video. I can show it show it for you in live demo, but for this kind of presentations, it's recommended to me write it as a video. So let's see how we can do it with a page object generator and with JDI. To save your time, I already created small code for test scenario and small code for test data initially, but we haven't any page objects here, no code for implementation of these page objects and so on. Let's look. Oh, it works. So here we have a scenario. I think we need about 1-2 minutes to write down this simple scenario. We have some test data. It's also just one file with this code. And we have no page objects, no methods, no pages, no nothing. We open our site, open the JDN plugin, and click on the button, generate several pages. We can put here a list of the pages to generate. Originally, now it's predefined, but you can manage what the pages you want to include. We download this page object, copy-paste it in project, and all our code are implemented. We start this test scenario, just a few seconds to run it. And we can see how it goes. So it's opened the page, log in, click on the contact form, fill it with the data, open the drop-downs, the multi-selector, and it's done. Nice. And what we have as a result, this is not only the test scenario implemented. We also have a good log that have all our input data and really human-readable results in the log. We also have it in text file. If you execute it remotely on Jenkins, you can see in console. So you can see. Here we have a page objects. We will stay on them a little bit more deeply on the slides. Also, we can have the good reports for it. By default, we use Allure. You can put the Allure results in target and run the Allure Serve plugin. And we will see the Allure service is started, and we have here the simple result for our test with all logs in it, the all stuff here.
How about errors?
Yeah?
How about errors?
What errors? If you
If you have an error, how it looks like?
here? No, I haven't for now examples. Maybe I can show you it on the after the presentation. Yeah, all errors are also well logged. We have special assets. These assets provide the logs for errors in human-readable language, like we have logs for actions. So it will write, you try to fill, I don't know, some text field with this locator. It's placed on this page object, and this is the result expected and actual. And you can easily find on this page which page object it's present, what locators are used, and all this stuff. Yeah. Huh? Yeah, I will go through the details on the slides. So what we have initially, this is kind of scenario. It's pretty much human readable, it's simple, and this is the code from framework. I don't write any methods and so all this stuff. You can open pages, check that they opened, you can submit it easily with the test data we have. How looks like the test data? You can write really simple test data classes if do it extend from data class. You just write the fields you have here. You don't need to create constructors, toString values and all this stuff, but these classes will be really good toString by the fields. We will have the ability to create any kind of, to fill this data with any kind of test data. See here you have one method set that allow you to fill just one field or fill with any order. You can simply create this test data. This is the result. It's pretty much log with pretty much the same to the test. For now, used the step log level. If you reduce the log level, for example, to info or debug, you will get much more info about the actions. For example, locators used and page objects where these elements are used also will be here. But it's more for test engineer, and maybe you need this kind of scenarios to generate them, for example, and provide to your managers or test manual testers to show what you are really tested here. So they provide you a documentation on the test scenarios you develop here that can be written by someone else. About the page objects and locators here. The pages have all the meta information about the page, title, URL, and also you can add some additional information how to validate it by contains, by regular expression, or by equals, for example. The elements locators. I will show on the next slide. I will show you how the locators are generated, but this is the result. They are pretty much simple. This can be XPath, this can be CSS. And also smart locators without the locators if they're based on this some rules that are in the page object generator. For example, here for text fields, text area, we have IDs, and the ID is the rule for our common locator. So we haven't locators here. This is the real code that's generated by this plugin. Just before we go to the rules, how this works, how we generate these elements, I will make some conclusion. For generating page objects, it takes just few seconds to run it. Maybe you need some time for preparation of this plugin to set up the rules, but originally we have already the packs of the rules by default, and to set up the list of URLs you want to go through. And it goes like the user, so it opens the pages and wait that all content are loaded, and after that generate the stuff from it. You will need to spend about 2-3 minutes to write the state data, I think not more, because this is pretty much simple. And to write this test scenario using, originally it is after the page object, so you generate page object and then you're using it to write this test scenario. I just save your time to write it here. And so with results, you can spend about 5, maybe 10, 20 minutes if you're not so experienced in it. But this is the example how you can save your time on it. And about rules, how it works. In a plugin, we have JSONs with rules for generating page objects. For example, we have generating elements. For example, you have these 3 elements on your HTML. This is 2 buttons with one layout and one other button with another layout. You can specify rules for all elements you want to find on your pages. And we have this kind of rule. Originally, it's in JSON. Here, it's just simplified form. That's for button. We have 2 rules. The CSS locator is how to find all elements that are meet to this locator. So first rule will find first 2 elements, and the second rule will find the last one. And the name is how to make it unique. So it will look on the attribute of founded elements, for example, 2 of the first one, and look for the value and make them unique by the value. As the result, you will get combined locator of these 2 things, locator, how to find all elements, and the unique part. And you also will get the names for these locators, for these elements, because we know the unique value. And of course, type, because we set up a rule for some types. This is how it works for different elements. And you can download the example of the rules you have. You can modify it a little bit and add your specific rule for your page objects. If your developers mostly use the kind of framework and follow the rules, or you can agree with them to follow some rules in the implementation. This will really can help you to save a lot of time. But of course, this is related to how developers do it. And if they do it in standard way, so follow the standard frameworks, it's easier. We provide the good rules for the standard frameworks. Logs and reporting, I already said that they are pretty much user-related. Just one thing I want to say here, that we use most popular tool Log4j for the logging, and you can really customizable, create the how you will log it. You can choose the flows where you log it on files, on HTML reports, on the reporting, and the templates, how to do it. Do you need to roll out your logs and maybe some kind of zip if you do it often. And the same for the reporting. You will get all this info in reports. But this is not all. The JDI is also add capabilities for more stable tests, and even in some times can perform the test execution faster than the original Selenium. Typically, how it's typically used. So it's the stabilization mechanism will help you sometimes reduce amount of flaky tests, and if your Selenium tests failed, you can introduce JDI Light and make most of them stable and fall only if this is layout issues or application issues. Of course, this is not a 100% result, but it's about 95%. It's really reducing amount of weights, no stale element exception, no not found exceptions, and all this stuff. It helps to write less code and, to remove these thread sleeps. So in average, it saves more than half time for maintaining your test execution results. And about increasing test execution speed, I just provide you 3 examples here. This is maybe a little bit complex examples. We have 3 elements on our test page. It's on the bottom. You can verify it by yourself with big elements. First of all, this is the text area that we want to fill with 3,000 symbols. This is not a really big text, but it's big enough, 3,000 symbols. The drop-down with 300 values and table with 400 rows. Originally, this is not recommended to have these big elements on the application in general, but just to show the performance results, I will get these big numbers. So the question for you, what do you think? How many time it will take to fill the text area with 3,000 symbols? Any guesses? 1 second, 5 seconds, less than a second, 10 seconds. We just write my text area, send case, and string with 3,000 symbols. 40 seconds? Huh? 35, 40 seconds. Another 1, 2, I have 5 minutes, okay. It's about 70 seconds for this input. And with JDI, we can do it in less than 100 milliseconds. For drop-down with 300 values, any guesses? Okay, I will say for you, it's about 12 seconds. Okay, it depends on the elements, but in our example, it's about 12 seconds. With JDI, you can do it in 100 milliseconds. You can also do it with Selenium, but this need from you really experience in the Selenium and write the JavaScript to do this. It's just it. And for table, for example, you have this kind of table, and you can look at how the filtering of the table can look in JDI. You just mentioned what rows you want to find. And for Selenium, it takes about 5 seconds. It's faster than for drop-down. And in JDI, it takes less than 1 second. Not so big performance like the previous, but also 5 times. It's a good, I think. Okay, let's go to the next. So one more statement. The JDI is a really simple platform. You can easily add it to your projects, just add the dependency on it, and you will get the immediate result. And you can write this kind of UI objects. It used the native elements that are native for users. It's well documented. With disclaimer, we now really hard work on the documentation and write different types of documentations for it. So it will be in April, I think, documented, and have a lot of real examples in our repositories. It's simple to maintain because you don't need to work with flaky tests and all these detailed logs and reports. And we work enough to make it customizable, so you can customize it on all the levels, on how to log it, how to work with each action of the element, or with all actions we have. You can customize it in a lot of levels. And you can simply integrate it with standard tools like Jenkins, like TeamCity and other things, with Selenoid and all other stuff. Like the Selenium here, no special things, but this is really easy. And one of the question, what is JDI maybe is good, but can I start it not from the scratch, but if I already have a lot of tests, for example, thousands of the Selenium tests? And the answer is yes, this is the idea of JDI Light that original JDI can do. You can just simply add the dependency on the JDI instead of Selenium and replace the imports to your initialization of the page objects that you have. You still have all the Selenium code, but it gets the additional capabilities of the JDI. It gets the logs, it gets the stabilization mechanism, and you can step by step improve your page objects, just replacing web elements to typified elements, reducing code for forms, tables, and so on. So the Selenium-based code also work on JDI, and you can increase its capabilities with JDI step by step. This is the example of how to do it. Yeah, and we go to the last slides, the highlights of JDI. This is simple to start and simple to switch from the Selenium. It has really cool